my question, to what extent does public education in the 21st century fail to prioritize divergent creative thinking? So when you think of divergent thinking, you probably think of the hit series Divergent. Well, the story of Beatrice, who goes into this 5-faction society where she's split into these different ways of living on how each faction lives this specific way. And she's different, she thinks a little differently, she has a combination of all the different traits of those factions, and she's not that far from the definition. So what is divergent thinking specifically? It's when you take unique ideas and you have a free-flowing, spontaneous sequence of ideas that come through your mind that just kind of go all over the place. They don't really have a standard or criteria in which you put logic into them. So as you know, the example I'm showing these paper balls, they all end up to one idea, which goes into convergent thinking, which is not necessarily the opposite, but it relates to divergent thinking, because when you combine convergent and divergent thinking, convergent is when you take those ideas that seem to be, spontaneous and kind of everywhere, and you create the best possible solution out of those ideas to create one answer, which happens to be the solution. So how does divergent thinking, or how has it failed in Florida? Like, how have teachers failed? Well, raise your hand if you ever felt wrong, or like that you just never wanted to answer a question because you would think you'd be incorrect. Well, this is not surprising, because in most classrooms you feel that way, because in this grading culture you feel wrong if you are wrong. Does that make sense? So in this example, this is a very popular example where the goldfish climbs a tree, which signifies how each student is different. And divergent thinking applies to every kind of student in every way to think about things. So how teachers have failed, or the curriculum has failed to reach out to these kids, is because they haven't taken the time for each child to apply the curriculum in their specific needs. So some people think divergently, some people think more convergently. It's all about where you are between the mix. Schools in Florida, however, happen to focus more on convergent thinking than divergent thinking, where every lesson focuses on finding the correct answer. So in chemistry, let's say you have these lab rules. They're there so then you can make good judgment and make the right decision instead of being all over the place, divergently thinking unique, different ways to do an experiment. Or however, in a playground, how you can't ride the slide by going up the slide. It holds an environment. It gives you a space to where you have your limitations and you can't think openly and outside. So it creates this stigma in school that you can't go past certain constraints. So there are things that are outside of school, which they shouldn't be. They should be in school. But outside of school, there are different things in Florida that happen to help each student learn. So there's tutoring centers such as Sylvan, and they benefit children by K through 12. They have tutoring with one tutor and one kid, and they apply all the curriculum to their specific needs. Such as, let's say someone's more bad at writing and they don't know how to use different style formatting. Then the tutor would help them in their needs of, like, if they're a visual learner, an audio, listening learner, and hands-on. And as you know, so with these statistics, the tutoring that has had the personalized tutor that helps kids with their specific needs, these statistics show that how much better they do in their real grade school when they have these tutoring supplied to them. And as you know, they do better in reading and math, and yeah. So there are programs in Florida in which that they do help kids think divergently and outside of the box. However, it's an extracurricular activity and it's not placed inside the classroom. Some of you might know Odyssey of the Mind from elementary school. Personally, my sister, she joined into it, and it's a competition where you give like a lot of kids in the school, like you give them teams, you break them up, and you put them in the groups, and they build projects and let their imagination kind of go everywhere, and let them think about things that, who knows, maybe kids nowadays won't think about because of the creative constraints. So what are creative constraints exactly? So creative constraints makes you think about reality. So let's say you want to build a rocket ship with like T-Rexes and all that stuff. That's not possible. So a creative constraints helps you build those barriers so then your ideas can be more possible, you could say. And that's how you turn divergent thinking into a useful way for the, to be useful for the future. So every student is different, and just like how flowers are different, everyone needs to be tended in a different way. And yeah, thank you.
Hi, Lena, I got 2 questions for you.
Let's hear them.
Okay. First, what information did you need that you couldn't find?
Okay, so there was a lot of emotional, like when I looked for articles, there was a lot of less statistics and more of how kids felt, and more of how teachers and how all the peers, how they think about school, and how teachers, you could say, cater to them in a specific way. So there wasn't a lot of statistics. There was more of, oh, this kid felt this way in elementary school, which was a struggle when trying to find evidence to back up my research question.
Okay. And then, how does your conclusion respond to any of the research or sources that you examined?
Can you repeat the question?
How does your conclusion or your resolution, your solution, I guess you would be a solution better, respond specifically to the research or sources that you examined?
Well, it shows that my conclusion about how every kid's different and how people think differently, it shows how the schools nowadays, they don't really cater to those needs of different people. They kind of all give you the same, like same exams and same everything. And it shows with how the Sylvan, the chart that I showed you, how they do so much better when they have like a tutor by them and giving them everything that they need right there, instead of having to go into the classroom and have the teacher, like the teacher's not able to do that for them like a tutor would be, because of the way that they teach them.
All right, cool, thank you.